Well, hey, everybody. Happy Sunday. Let's do a Mike in the Midwest show. Let's see. We're good there. Just check here. All right. We shall do a show. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 249 of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find me on the socials at Be Our Guest Mike. That'll be on x.com, Instagram, and Threads. But you can get a hold of me mostly in the clubhouse, and that would be at beourguestpodcast.com/clubhouse. That's where all the cool kids are hanging this summer and all year, but especially this summer. I got that on my mind because I just got back from Walt Disney World covering all the cool kids summer events down there, and I really didn't know what that meant, but Disney helped us learn for a couple of days down there, and it's a cool event, which we'll be talking about this week a little bit more. I know we've kind of covered it slightly on the show the past couple of weeks, but Pam and I will talk about it this coming Friday. Just if you have kids, they are doing some cool, like minor stuff. But when you take all these minor things, it adds up to really cool activities. If you have the younger set, they brought back these little things. Like Pam talked about it on the shows this past week. More than just running up to a character and getting an autograph and a quick picture and boom. The characters are hanging out with the kids. I mean, we got to see it up close and personal. And it's not just happening at the parks. It's happening at select resorts like Pop Art, Caribbean Beach Wilderness Lodge. But they've really turned an animation courtyard into this place that has been dead for, gosh, seems like 10 years. Into this place that is so high energy because I got to see the new Little Mermaid show. That show is really good. And I used to love the old show. You know, we've talked about this here on the this whole podcast is based on my love of retro stuff. I love stuff from the 70s, the 80s, early 90s ish. It's kind of my wheelhouse. And that old Little Mermaid show had those old kind of lasers, and it felt very 80s of its time, right? Of the Little Mermaid, original movie. And I also have nostalgia for it because the Little Mermaid was Ariel was Paige's favorite princess when she was little. She always sang, Part of My World, and she was Ariel for Halloween a couple of times, had the red hair wig and, all that stuff. I mean, we wore out that VCR tape that with the clamshell. We wore that tape out, her growing up. And back in the day, before I was scared to fly, when I was scared to fly, when I wouldn't fly, we used to drive to Walt Disney World 3 or 4 times a year, right? And you remember those? I mean, we talked about it here on the podcast. If you've been with us since the beginning, that was just part of the show. We'd go down at Christmas time because Pam and I were both teachers. So we'd go a couple of days after Christmas. We'd come back right before school went back in January. We'd go down in the summertime and maybe one other time of the year, but we'd have that 15-hour drive from St. Louis. We go down for a race or two. But the drive again was about 15 hours. And back then, the first couple of drives, we didn't have DVD players. We had a portable VCR, which you strap this big old monster thing on the back seat. It kind of hung over the headrest, and Paige would bring her clamshell Little Mermaid tape. And she also had some Full House, like a season of Full House or something on tapes too, I remember. But she would just watch this. I remember the one trip when we brought her best friend Molly, or one of her best friend who played soccer with her. They sat in the back seat and they just played Little Mermaid over and over and over all the way down to Florida. And they would be, I think they were like 7 or so at the time. And they kept saying, how much further? And Pam would always say, we're 4 Little Mermaids away from Walt Disney World. Now we're only 3 Little Mermaids away from Walt Disney World. So that'd be like, a Little Mermaid was 90 minutes. So that's how we judged how far away from Walt Disney World we were. So there's a lot of nostalgia for me for the Little Mermaid character and especially the story. And then I get in there and I get to see the show for the first time since they've reopened it, obviously, since it closed. But one of the cool things was I ran into a friend of the show. His name's Steven, who was a, we worked with him at Give Kids the World. He was kind of their outreach person and helped us with all the fundraising and all the stuff we've done with them over the past like 7 or 8 years. He is an amazing person. And when it comes to like the point person at Give Kids the World with all their fundraising, he did the Night of a Million Lights and he was great, right? He's always been our point person for our fundraising Give Kids the World. Well, he left in the past couple of years to go back to work directly with Disney. But I ran into him at the animation courtyard. He was there with his son, and they were checking out all the new stuff too. And I didn't even know this, but he's like, "You going to see the Little Mermaid show?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm checking out all the cool kid summer stuff. I want to see the Mermaid show." He's like, "Man, it's awesome." He's like, "I did my college program in the Little Mermaid show." I was like, "Shut up! You did the college program and the Mermaid show was your thing?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I was like, so what do you think?" Right? I mean, that's you have an attachment to the original. He's like, "It is amazing." So when he said that and gave his approval, because obviously somebody whose college program is he's going to be very protective of that, right? I mean, that's something that he did the original. I mean, I'm sure that he wouldn't want to see a lot of changes, but he said it is amazing. He said they really updated it well. They brought in just the right amount of new technology, but there's a lot of the old shows still in there, a lot of the same props. One of the characters that I loved that I always loved in the old show was there's a turtle that dances. I don't even, he's a physical prop and he dances a certain way in the show. He's there. He pops back in, he does his thing. I love that guy and he's still in the show. Thank God they saved the old dancing turtle. He's back and he does the same dance moves. Rock on the dancing turtle. He's on the left side. You're looking at the stage. Disney, hey, at least you saved the dancing turtle. Muppets are gone today, but the dancing turtle lives. So rock on there. Anyway, he liked it. I went in. It's a great show. And I'll tell you what, man, it hits differently, right? When, I'm there by myself. Well, I mean, I'm not there by myself, right? I'm there with Pam Forrester and Ben Lappin and, a bunch of people there was like 9 of us from the agency. What we did was we divide and conquer. We all went to different places around property and we're gathering pictures for the websites and for social media and stuff. And like, I was going to the studios to get some stuff. But we're not with each other. Like I'm doing this stuff at the studios this morning by myself. So I'm like, I'm going to get as much as I can. You saw I did a couple of reels on Instagram and so forth. So I'm in there, but dude, I'm by myself in the show. And the end of the show, and I don't hide this on the podcast or anywhere, dude. I'm kind of emotional. Like we're Disney fans, right? We believe in stuff and we buy into the magic and so forth. The end of the show hits, right? And when King Triton's like, there's only one thing left. It's how much I'm gonna miss her. It's like, oh, stop. Because the show was so good. But dude, when he uttered that line and then with his trident, bam, pops your legs on. I'm like, dude, I don't need this. As somebody who I've already had one daughter move to Chicago, and now my other daughter is going to be a senior. Okay, Disney, let's stop. And then I've seen Scott go through this. Like his daughter just graduated. We don't need all this right now. Like, it's all fun and games when they're 7, like to do all that stuff, and that's cute and fun and all that stuff. But man, it hits a little bit different when they're 17. Because holy God, it's moving way too fast. We don't need King Triton like giving us a life lesson right there. I'm just trying to see the show so I can talk about it on my podcast. It was like, I'm like sitting in the back row, 2 rows back, not in the very back row, but like 2 from the back. And I'm like, oh, hold it together here, Rollman. It's not good, but it's a great show. I'm just saying, if you're going down and see it, I didn't see the villain show. That thing was really popular. Villains aren't really my thing. I could have seen it, but I was trying to pick up some other stuff. In the animation courtyard, some of the other stuff I got to see, though. Here's the other thing I saw. One of the things we rave about that we miss at the studios is Streetmosphere, right? Those characters that brought energy to the studios. They brought spontaneity. They brought comedy. They brought, it was like live action people in the studios. It was back in a way. So there was this character that he was hanging out all day in the animation courtyard, and I saw a couple of his acts, and he was one of them. He was an ice cream vendor, and he had this little ice cream. I don't know. He was like the Good Humor man. He had like a little ice cream wagon, but in the wagon he had all kinds of props. And but the cool thing was is alongside him he had two characters. He had Goofy and then Donald Duck, like, and they would rotate in and out. So it was like a character like a meeting, not really a meet and greet, but they were there interacting with the kids and the adults, but mostly kids. But this guy who was an ice cream vendor, and I know he was one of the old Streetmosphere characters from back in the day. I recognized him. I'd seen him years ago on Hollywood and Sunset. Dude, he was awesome. And you'll see him on social media, I'm sure. And he's on one of my reels. So look on Instagram. I taped some of his magic trick and all this stuff. But he's like spinning plates. He does a magic trick, and he gets everybody amped up. And it was Streetmosphere. It was disguised Streetmosphere. It was great. I mean, people were clapping and watching him do magic, and he's calling out people and making people laugh and like making fun of dads. And dude, it was Streetmosphere. It's exactly what we wanted. It was. And I just hope that people react to this and enjoy this, because this is where the studios sings. I'll be talking about this on the main show even more, but I was giving you the heads up because you're the first person I've got to talk to. This is the first time I've recorded since I've been back. So that was very cool. They also had a jump roping act where the kids got to see some cool jump ropers with high energy, bright neon colored outfits. And then the kids could jump with them. Kids could get in there, double dutch, single rope. It's just stuff so the kids could get active and get involved. So Cool Kid Summer's fun. Like, and also if you check in at those resorts and go to the front desk, those 4 select resorts, Wilderness, Pop, Art, Caribbean Beach, they'll give you this little goodie bag, but you got to go to the front desk when you check in. You can't just go straight to your room. They'll give you a goodie bag with like activities and stuff in the bag, stickers. So make sure you do that. I want to give you that heads up. Go there. It's a cool little blue bag. It says Cool Kid Summer on the side. So make sure you do that as well. But, yeah, lots of fun. Got to go to GO82. Talk about that on the podcast. Whew, that place is awesome, especially if you're an Epcot fan. They brought a lot of old Epcot props into GO82. Remember the old ground, the fiber optic ground in Future World that you used to get to see outside of Interventions? It's in there. That's what the floor is. It's pretty cool. The drinks, dude, that old fashioned I had was amazing. I would never pay $28 myself for a drink. I'm just too frugal, but Pam Forrester was paying, and I appreciated it very much. It was very, very good. And I had ahi tuna, the small bite thing. Those things were super tasty, and just the ambiance, like they're playing great Future World music, and the friends were awesome. That we sat right on the windows looking out into Future World. It was like, I sat next to Ben Lappin, one of our other agents, and like we were just looking right out over, the Walt statue right on the windows. And I told him, I was like, it's almost like we're like little Epcot gods. Like we just sit down there and narrate like what was happening with all the guests walking around there in that section of, I know it's not Future World anymore, but what I'm talking about. And, like you can see everybody just doing their thing. Like you could just make it, like you could narrate their stories, right? Like this person they're headed right. They're headed to Moana, the journey of water. But wait, they stopped. They forgot that nope, they need to go get a Starbucks, because you see them pausing. Oh, no, they don't want a Starbucks. They're going to go to the land now. They're going to go ride the bus ride it. So we're like up there narrating people as they make decisions. It was fun. That's what we do as nerds. So, it's a cool place. Go there. I know it's super hard to get an ADR, but it's super expensive. I mean, it is. It would be like this would be a super like celebration kind of place. This isn't like a place you're going to go very often. But if you are, and I know a lot of you definitely are, like an Epcot historian and Epcot aficionado, this is a splurge, but it is super cool. I mean, when I walked in, like the chandeliers are awesome. There's great artwork of like monorails, and it's pretty cool. Like it's got a tunnel when you go in. It's pretty sweet. They give you like a towel to wash your, cool off your face and your hands, and they take care of you. So GO82 is pretty sweet. All right. So let's, we'll talk about more of this week on the show. I don't want to do the whole show on that this week, but here we are. Cause I don't want to make this, I'm trying to make this show like 20 minutes, cause it's supposed to be a mini podcast. We do 4 other shows in the feed. I don't want to hammer you with too much over here. It's supposed to be a little 15 to 20 minute show, But I appreciate you, and I know we've had some new patrons this past week, and I appreciate you guys joining us. I hope you enjoyed Mike in the Midwest. If you ever have any comments or questions, let me know. It's patreon.com/Be Our Guest Podcast. Drop a comment, and if you want to put that on the air, you don't. Hey, comments are always welcome here on Mike in the Midwest. I appreciate you guys so very much. So last week we talked about that book, Since the World Began, that I picked up in the late 90s at my grocery store called Schnucks. It was in the dairy section in this big bin with a bunch of random books. This was a big hardcover book, like a coffee table book. It was $1. And all it did was talk about all the places at Walt Disney World, the building of the resorts, the building of the theme parks, the conceptual art of a coming, possibly Disney cruise line that was coming. They only had the Magic. That's because I think this book was published in 1997. The Magic sailed for the first time in 1998. They talked a little bit about the town of Celebration. But what it did for me was it sparked this, because it had lots of like artist renderings of things, beautiful color pictures of the resorts, of the theme parks, little did you know kind of sections, about attractions in the theme parks, about different things about each one of the resort hotels. And what it did for me, again, this was like almost in the pre-World Wide Web era, was I just read through this book time and time again, and my imagination soared, because at this point in my life, I had not been to Walt Disney World near as much as I have been nowadays. So I didn't know what it was like to go to Caribbean Beach Resort or to go to Port Orleans French Quarter, or back then it was just called Port Orleans, because the other sister resort was Dixie Landings at the time. And I just wondered, wow, those two resorts are kind of sister resorts, and they sit on its own river. Like, what's that? They have a river that they sit on, like a river. Because in my mind's eye, like what a river was to me, somebody in St. Louis, right? A river was kind of a dirty Mississippi River, Missouri River that's gigantic, but it's brown and dirty looking and very industrial. Like, I didn't have an idea of what the Sassagoula looked like. The Sassagoula, when you see that, when you go there and stay there on vacation, you guys have been there, right? If you get up in the morning, right at sunrise and run that path along the Sassagoula, I mean, it's like glass in the morning before they send out the boats. And you're running on that path along the Sassagoula, say through Riverside or French Quarter. It's hard to not stop when you're running, because you want to take your phone out so many times, because literally I've said this on the show so many times. It's like running through a postcard, because like sometimes you got to stop and take a picture, because that reflection off the Sassagoula across the way to the mansions it's like it doesn't look real. And then the same way when you're over at French Quarter, you see those buildings that are all different colors, but even though it's kind of looks haphazard with the different colors with those pastels, you got the wrought iron that's black and the lamp posts, and there's this wild beauty in it. And that's what I think challenges me when I run over there, because I do run outside when I stay at French Quarter and Riverside, because they don't have treadmills at those two resorts, is that there is such a beauty. Even when I'm running down in the far side of Riverside in Alligator Bayou, in that rustic area, like when you see the Spanish moss hanging down, and there's a beauty in that. But when I was reading these books, I would see pictures and I'm like, do hotels look like that? Because of course my conception back then because I was not a world traveler. I was not a traveler, period. Again, I didn't do much other than stay home at this point in my life. So a hotel to me was like a Motel 6 or like a Days Inn. It was a room with a parking lot, maybe 2-3 decks, and that was it. When I pulled up to French Quarter for the first time and stayed there, and like you got to go under that, it's called a porte cochere, which I've learned, but back then it was just like a canopy. But I pulled in at night and it had all those white bulbs illuminated, right? And jazz music was playing as you pulled in. I was like, where am I? I haven't even stepped foot into the hotel yet. And then I got to the check-in desk and it's got all the wrought iron and jazz music's playing. And you see the hustle and bustle of people coming. You see the buses coming in, which was very cool because what was it? Magic Kingdom, Epcot, MGM Studios back in the day. I mean, I was like, dude, this is the best. And I hadn't even gotten like to the lobby. I hadn't even gotten to the food court. I haven't even gotten to the pool, anything. Like I was just at the check-in desk. I was like, I'm sold. I hadn't even made it. So seeing that like in the books was just like, is this real? Like I was blown away. So the book, I just kept going through. And then when I got there, it was even better than the book. So that book really did change my life. And then when I went for the first time, I just kept going back over the book every time when I got home. And I got to see when I was like, I got to see the Polynesian, I got to go to the Polynesian. I got, but that was just dreaming, but it was pretty cool. So anyway, that's what we talked about. The feedback from last week's show, my good friend Paul Westbrook chimed in. Appreciate you, Paul. Said, love this episode, Mike. Really love them all. $1 for that book. How can you beat it? I agree. I've spent big, not big bucks, but I've spent, regular price for some books that I've been like, oh, that was a turd. That was a terrible book. But I finished it because I bought it at, regular price. And I'm like, it was okay. And then you buy this book for $1 and I am still talking about it 25 years later. And I bought it for, like I said, I bought like 3 copies because they had like multiple copies in the bin. And I went back the next week when I needed more groceries and they were still in there. And I think I have 3 copies because I bought the other 2 copies. And one of them I put in my school library so the kids in my classroom could look at it. And I just told them about it. I'm like, kids, look at this book. Like someday maybe you get to go to Walt Disney World. This place is so awesome. And they would all, I told me, can't take this one home. This one has to stay in the classroom. But when you finish your work, like you can pull this one off the shelf. And like these hotels, these are real places. Like, but someday maybe your parents will take you here and you can see this hotel's, looks like Hawaii. It's called the Polynesian. And this hotel's kind of, it's called the Grand Floridian. It's super fancy. There's a hotel kind of like this in San Diego called Del Coronado. And yeah, I geeked out with my kids. Most of us they probably didn't get to go there most of the time. I didn't get to go there most of the time, but you know what? We all dreamed and it was fun. So yeah, that book did change my life. All right. So let's see. We got some more feedback here. Let me hit this and let's see here. Paul's got another feedback here. It says, I love this episode and so many of the recent ones. I've been a Patreon for a while, but have been blowing it by not keeping up with the Mike in the Midwest. What a treat. Thanks, Mike, for letting us get to know you a little better and for enhancing the family feel of the BOG community, for which I'm so grateful for. Well, thank you. Oh, I don't think I have this set up right. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Thought Pam's walk-off was so cool, especially thought it was great how she thought of so many of her current colleagues. She truly is a Jedi master. Love the episode where you said how Star Wars was so deep and has so many lessons to teach. It sure does. Oh, and the Magic Mike episode about your high school modeling career. LOL, great story. Yeah, that was not great. That was just, I got roped in. Thanks to for adding depth to the Mike's Favorite Things channel on the Discord. Can't wait to hear more stories as I catch up on the episodes backwards while also staying current. COVID was a challenge in many ways, but so glad it gave us this show. Thanks for all you do. You and this community really help brighten my days. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Yeah, COVID was the impetus for Mike in the Midwest, and it really does still help us because with the video podcasting, it has gotten super expensive, and this is the only way to keep all that going. So I appreciate y'all very, very much. Because like I said, back in March, they doubled our cost to keep the video podcasting going, which they give us more capabilities. I will say that. I just got an update that we can now do this on a mobile phone and an iPad. So we will be doing this from the podcast cruise. So you'll be able to see some coverage from the podcast cruise next month. So shout out there because of your support. We'll be broadcasting from the Disney Magic in July. But again, we wouldn't be able to do this without your support. So thank you for that $5 a month. It really does keep us on the air. And speaking of podcast cruise, Trish is going to be on that ship with us July 6th on the Disney Magic. And she says, I've got several secondhand Disney books from half-priced books. I use them fairly regularly for trivia. I love places like that or large bins of books because you feel like you're searching for treasure. By the way, plug, you need to go to the clubhouse because Trisha has the best anywhere on the internet. I'm not kidding. Anywhere on the internet, not just on like our website or anything. This is the best trivia because half the time I look at it, I don't know. Because if it's about movies, I'm out. And her questions are people get them all the time. I don't. I get them like every 10th. Come on over, beourguestpodcast.com/clubhouse. You probably already know that, but she does a trivia question every single day. Sometimes they're audio hints like from her trips. Sometimes they're little video clips or pictures. Sometimes they're straight trivia questions. They're parks, they're movies, they're music. I'm telling you, it's a great variety. Get in on Trisha's games. It's beourguestpodcast.com/clubhouse, right in the middle channel. Boom. It's right in the middle so you don't miss it. The trivia game. Anyway, get in there. Trisha hosts it every day and she rocks it. Back to her thing. I remember as a kid getting the vacation DVDs. I'd watch those every day leading up to our next Disney trip. It was years in between my childhood visits and adult visits, and I was bummed when I realized they stopped sending those. I was hoping to share that experience with my daughter, but in this day and age, the internet is a whole lot cheaper than Mickey covering the bill for vacation planning DVDs. I'm with you there. I used to always get the VHS tapes, right? I have a ton of those. Oh God. I used to get multiple copies. I get the Disney Cruise Line one. I get the Walt Disney World one. I'd watch those and I'd always get the DVDs. And if you remember Magical Mouse Radio, our radio station, I'd rip the audio and put that on the radio station. Man, and I loved when those tracks came on the radio station. Oh, they were the best. But yeah, I love those things. But I guess now you can just, like this morning I watched a guy. I found a new Disney Magic thing to watch. This guy walked the entire ship. I'm not even done with it. He's walking the entire ship from the bottom of deck 1 all the way around the entire ship. Deck 1, boom. Deck 2, deck 3. And he's talking about everywhere he's walking, the entire deck of every ship, of every deck of the Disney Magic, and talking about every place on the ship. I think we're on deck 3. Yeah. And so we still got a long way to go. But yeah, I guess that's kind of why everybody creates the content. Anyway, let's get to today's topic. Well, if you have comments, we need comments because that's what makes the show better, because it's not just me. It's patreon.com/beourguestpodcast, feedback from today's show or any show so we can talk about it next Sunday, which will be Father's Day. All right. So today, real quick, and see if this spurs any memories for you. But last night, Pam and I were walking with Riley after dinner, after we had too many rolls at Texas Roadhouse. Big mistake. We were in pain. We're walking down our street, and I heard a bird as we were walking, and it was a cardinal. And the cardinal's my favorite bird, and it was my grandma's favorite bird. My grandma always had cardinals on the Christmas tree, these little clip-on cardinal birds. She'd always put in the Christmas tree like 4 or 5 of them. And she'd always have a couple cardinals like around the house, these little, cardinal birds. And she always had an affinity for cardinals. And my grandma was like, she was like my mom. I grew up at my grandma and grandpa's house. And so I've heard this legend, and I don't know if it's true, but when you see a cardinal, that's a loved one coming back to say hello. I don't know if you've ever heard that. But every time I see a cardinal, I think of my grandma. So last night we're walking and I hear this bird, and I know it's a cardinal, right? It's going, boop, 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 boop. Well, it does the cardinal sign. I can't do it. And I told my wife, I said, I know that's a cardinal. You know why? And she knows why, because she knows, because she's from St. Louis. And there's a reason why people in St. Louis know that's a cardinal. Besides and it's because of our baseball team, right? And our football team, because our generation that I'm in, we had not only the baseball Cardinals, but when we were kids, we had the football Cardinals too. The football team was here, and they were the Cardinals. Now they're the Arizona Cardinals, but they were in St. Louis at the time. So we had 2 teams that were called the Cardinals. But anyway, when we were kids, one of the giveaways when you went to the baseball games, a lot of the times kids got these little plastic, it was a red little plastic cardinal bird that you would put water in. Now, you wouldn't fill it up with water. You would fill it about a quarter of the way with water. And in the bird's tail, it was like a whistle. You would blow into the cardinal's tail, and the water would kind of bubble a little bit. You couldn't fill it all the way. You'd fill it about a quarter of the way. When you blew it, it would make the cardinal sound. Boop, 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 boop. And it sounded just like a cardinal. And every kid I knew, well, at least everybody like on my street had one of these. And they gave them away at Cardinal games a few times a year. I guess they sold them at stores around town, but I always got the free one when we went to a Cardinal game. It seemed I always went to a Cardinal game when they gave these away because I had a couple of them, through my childhood, and I kept it because it was like a sacred thing. Like I did not want to break it, I did not want to lose it. I love this thing. It sat on my dresser, and I love it. It was so cute. I mean, it's just a red piece of plastic, no other color, it was just molded red, maybe a 3 inches tall, really small. But man, it was so cool because it did a little cardinal chirp. But that day, like, all the kids would blow it. Boop, boop. I mean, it was super cool sounding at the ballpark that day. Cardinals score run. Boop, 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 boop. But that's how, like, my generation, I swear, knows what a cardinal sounds like because of that toy. And that got me thinking about how, I don't know if it's my generation or if it's just me, how little toys meant so much to us. Like, it wasn't the big toy. Like, I know, like, the past week, everybody's been talking about like Switch 2, which I have no, like, I'm not a big video gamer. Like, I had a Commodore 64 growing up, and I was totally into that because I ran a BBS, and I loved that. I didn't play games, but I loved the whole idea of running a BBS where I could, again, does this sound familiar? I love that I had the biggest BBS for Commodores in the St. Louis area, in the 314 area code, where people came on. We had message boards. We had like a big community. People uploaded and downloaded software, but we had meetups and stuff like that. Like, it was a community, right? I love that. And I did that like in my teen years. That was cool for me. It was called the Far Side. That was fun. But I know the Switch 2 came out this week, right? And everybody's like talking about that. A great system and all this, but it's super expensive. But in my childhood, like, the toys I remember that were so cool were like little things that I thought were so cool, like things like stompers. I don't know if you remember stompers, but they were a huge deal to me. There were these little cars that were hardly bigger than a AA battery, and they didn't do much. Like, they were little pickup trucks. I think most of them were like little mini trucks. Because remember, mini trucks were popular in the 80s. My dad had a Datsun mini truck. It was before Nissan. It was a company called Datsun. It was like a little light truck. And these all kind of looked like that. I had a Ford Ranger as my first truck, a little light truck. But it had like little, like, knobby tires. You could switch out the tires, like, to be like hard rubber or like spongy rubber. I don't know what. I guess if they're kind of terrain, you're going to take your little stopper on. But the stopper was probably 4 inches long. It was really little. You can look them up, but they were cool. You put a little AA battery in, it had headlights that worked, and it would just basically go straight. You could drive it over pencils and stuff, but like, it was so cool because you could, they had different kinds, right? And you collect them. But I remember stompers were a big deal. Another thing that I remember from my childhood that was a big deal that if you got was a yo-yo. Now, it wasn't just like a 1950s yo-yo. I remember in my generation that there was this kind of yo-yo that would, like, and I got to look up because I've been thinking about this all morning. I can't remember the brand name, and I haven't had a chance to really do the research. But there's this kind of yo-yo that would basically like snap back to you, and it was almost like a ball. But it was in the 80s that these things were super popular, and I think it kind of lit up. But they were super popular. Like, I needed one of these so badly to be cool. But you would, of course, the commercial would have you doing all the tricks and all that. I never knew how to do the tricks, because on the commercial it makes it look like super easy. Like, everybody can do the, walk the dog or the, cats in the cradle, whatever. But it was like, and everybody carried it around just in case like a yo-yo contest broke out, at school. But these yo-yos, some of them, like I said, would light up or glow in the dark. And I mean, they were so cool, all different colors. But man, you had to have this like little yo-yo. And it seemed like, that yo-yo was like the center of my universe for a week. Like, I had to have it. Like my stompers, just like my cardinal bird, just like little things like that. I remember just even there was a Pac-Man watch that I was just obsessed with. Like, I had to have this Pac-Man watch, and I never got the Pac-Man watch. I never got it. I would like to have one now, except I have an Apple Watch that keeps track of my steps, so I can't give that up because I'm obsessed with that. But, things like that, they were small, they weren't big things. But I look at this nowadays and I think, do kids care about small things like this nowadays? Because it seems to me like all kids are obsessed with is things like Switches, like Switch 2s and iPads and iPhones. It could be a perception thing. But when I go to the stores, do stores market little toys like this anymore? I mean, it seems like they marketed so many things to our generation that were like $5 to $10 toys. Like Playmobil people. Um, there's so many there's so many action figures and so forth that were marketed to us. Like it seemed like that so many toys for us were like $5. And it seems like there's not a lot of that marketed to kids nowadays. It's like huge things and like apps and so forth on those things. I don't know. So where do you fall on that? And what were some of your like small things that were a huge deal to you? That's what I'd love to hear and share next week. All right, so this went way too long, but I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was a little trip down memory lane, but we'll continue that trip next week. We'll have a live call-in show tonight. Scott will join me, and we'll talk more about Cool Kids Summer. We'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Muppets going away. I got to do that one last time. Got to have a piece of rat pizza one last time. It was good. It was sad. I was up in the wedding reception room. I'm going to miss it. But yeah, we'll talk. So join me tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. Give me a call. And I think we're going to do a fun show called Ranking Things. And I'll give you a topic and I want you to rank them 1 through 3. Just give me your top 3. So we'll have some fun. Give me a call tonight. So until then, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.